friends. Welcome to ABC's To a Good Life, where we explore different people's values and see how they've helped them through difficult times. Today we have Brajananda Das here, who's actually an old friend from high school and, has since found his path in following the way of Krishna. And we're going to explore a few of the values that have not only helped him, but he also thinks may be important during these times facing the coronavirus pandemic. So, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing very well. It's nice to connect with you after all these years, and yeah, I'm excited that you invited me on the show here. And yeah, I feel like I have yeah a lot of things going on in my life right now that I have to apply some of the teachings of the ancient yoga texts that I've been studying for the past 9 years of my life. So um, yeah, it's nice to be able to share this publicly. Helps me, helps the world. So it's a nice opportunity. So I appreciate you having me here to speak about some of these things.
Definitely. And I think it's important for all of us right now. Whatever guidance or support or vulnerability really that we can offer, because this path will be much easier if we stride it collectively, rather than spending it, more so closed off and in panic. So, thank you for coming on
Right.
today. Very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. What are
Okay.
what are the values that we're going to be discussing today?
Yeah. So the values of patience, self-reflection, and tolerance.
Right. So where would you like to start?
Oh, I think patience is a nice place to start
Okay.
because I think a lot of us have to practice patience automatically in our life, but I think especially at a time like this, we're going to have to practice a lot of patience. Um, One of the key principles of yoga is to have patience, actually, because we understand that we have little control over our external circumstances in life. It's kind of like I can't control the weather, but I can control how I react to weather. It's the same thing with astrology for anyone out there who's had any um, dove into astrology and knows something about astrology. We can't really change how the planets are going to have effect on us, but we can change how we react to what will happen to us in our life in that regard, and what the stars will bring. So then that kind of comes like, if you know anything about that, you know that this is all tied with the stars as well. So, but the point is that how we react. So we have control over that at least. We may not have the larger control, but we have at least in our immediate life what kind of control we have. So patience is one of these key virtues in all the traditions of the world. They talk about how patience is something to develop, which will help us through life. It's a wisdom to um, yeah to utilize. So patience, like for example, we have this coronavirus going on. Um, it's basically holding up a lot of people's lives. Like we were going about life like any other regular day, and then all of a sudden things stopped. A lot of things stopped, at least externally speaking. Like people stopped going to work, or they're working from home. People stopped going to school, or they're going online to school, or people got fired from their job. There's thousands of people getting fired or laid off, or businesses that are collapsing right now. Stock markets, um, it's crashing in a sense. It's been going down for a month now, roughly, and people are wondering what the heck's going on. Like I need to do something, but you can't do anything. You're recommended to stay home. Soon, I believe it's going to be that you have to stay home to counteract the effects of what's going to a wave. It's a wave of have this outbreak. So we're gonna have to. It's gonna be even tighter. You know, we're gonna be home. And it's gonna be more and more. While someone's trying to call me. Um, Sorry about that.
No worries.
That's the one thing about being on the phone. You have to stream and people can still call you.
Understood.
But yeah, he's trying to call me again. Okay. Let me just message him real quick.
Okay. I'm going to also turn it on Do Not Disturb mode real quick.
No, that's okay. I'm good now. I just sent him a, sorry, I can't talk right now, thing. Automatic message.
Okay.
So yeah, so we have to endure. We have to utilize the patience. You know, there's not much we can do externally in a sense. You know, there's some precautions we can take and some things we can arrange, but really, there's a lot out of our control. So to practice patience is to just surrender to the circumstance, surrender to basically. Sorry, he keeps trying to call me. I don't know.
Do you have a Do Not Disturb?
Yeah, let me see if I have a Do Not Disturb thing. Hold on. I think I do. Do Not Disturb, right?
Yep, it should be at the top.
The moon, right?
No, I think that's probably night mode. Maybe it has like a phone on it that's put down.
I have iPhone.
Got it. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I wonder, how are we connected? Are we on the internet? Anyway. I hope he gets the message. I hope he realizes I just denied his call 5 times. Okay, so anyway, thanks for tolerating me, everyone.
Oh yeah, patience, right?
Patience, yeah, have patience with me. I'll help you develop some patience.
This is all part of the, cathartic experience for our audience.
Yeah, actually, I actually planned all of this.
Yeah. I'm really just calling him behind my back.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, we have to be patient with each other too. It's like wanting to have a baby. For example, one of my gurus, he said that it's like we want to have a baby. We need to practice patience because a baby doesn't come overnight. You have to. There's conception and there's 9 months of the growth in the womb. So it's not like a baby will just pop out. I want a baby right now. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to prepare. And like if you're going to school or anything, you have to have patience. You want to be a doctor, but it's going to take 7+ years of schooling to become a certified practicing doctor. So it's like that. And what we're dealing with now does require a lot of patience. Definitely. And I'm sure you can relate. I'm sure you have situations in your life where you're having to practice patience right now. It's almost like forced on us,
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. And, everything work-related is just, grinded to a halt. And I do have to say this. So I share this value strongly. And and the reason why is because it's not one that comes easy to me. And that's what I've found is typically the most important values in my life are the ones that I've suffered so much pain from, avoiding for a duration. And eventually the circumstances became too overwhelming to the point where I'm like, okay, I gotta be patient in this case. But yeah, I've always kind of rushed into things, and fortunately at this point, I'm recognizing that there is so little in my control at this point that it's actually been easier to submit, and just go with the flow, because rather than trying to solve the immediate issue. I'm recognizing, I'm looking at this in the long term and saying, not only is this likely, the circumstances of that are going to cascade from this are going to be long lasting, but I don't really believe we're ever going back to a life we've previously known. And I don't say that in a fear mongering way. I say that in like, this is going to prompt a lot of change that was already in the pipeline, right? And so rather than trying to get back to normal, uh, having foresight and looking for, well, what is to come, and let me prepare myself for that, because if I'm trying to reclaim this, I think I'm going to struggle a lot more. You know?
A lot of people are starting to look at the ways we do things in this world and start to see, like, where these illnesses come from is a neglect that we have, of because this one and other ones from the same strain of SARS or whatnot, they come from basically slaughterhouses, more or less, to put it that way. That it's just captivity of animals in inhumane situations, and that is violence, and it breeds violence. So I think people are going to start to like wake up to vegetarian diets and just living more consciously in the environment. Practicing better cleanliness, like having better cleanliness standards, which is much needed. I mean, America's a pretty clean country, and but it's not as clean as some countries. It's cleaner than like Mexico and India, perhaps, but which I've been both places, and they're not as clean as America in a sense, but there's other places in Europe and Japan that are much cleaner than America. I think America is going to start trying to get some of the catch on some of those trends with how they follow there, and like focus more on this preventative than I'm hoping, at least. I mean, there's a lot of stupid people out there, of course, but but, hopefully there'll be enough intelligent people to try to make try to make some serious changes in legislation or just their own personal daily lives. And I know, in our society, which like in yoga societies and whatnot, people are very interested in being conscious, and people are very interested in simple lifestyles. Like not putting too much, not their carbon footprint is not as heavy as someone else's. And they work on that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and we're trying to better that even, and trying to think of more preventative ways that we can, in our little sphere of influence, affect the world, and also spread knowledge, because knowledge, in the knowledge of yoga, for example, is cleanliness, it is thoughtfulness, it is patience. These are things that we can teach society through our own actions and through our words, literature, whatnot, sharing that. And I've been heavily involved in sharing literature for many years. I used to just travel and distribute, Bhagavad Gita's and yoga texts like that, and people, it affects the world, and it has, and it starts with one person or two people, and they tell another person, and they tell another three people, and this is like how a culture grows, and how it changes, and how a revolution begins. And so my hopes are this will be a nice wake up call.
Definitely.
It's sad that humanity has to go learn lessons the hard way, but that's just how it goes. And I think this comes to I want to talk about tolerance first, if you're okay with that.
Definitely.
Our next topic here, moving along, tolerance, because tolerance also goes with patience. Because even when we're being patient with something, then tolerance comes when we're having to deal with something that's uncomfortable, or dealing with something that's is not heavenly in a sense. It's like you tolerate an itch, because if you itch, that itch, it's gonna get worse. It's like you have a rash. If you itch that rash, it just becomes worse. Or tolerating other people, in our lives. There might be, say if you have a child, for example, you have to tolerate the child, because the child is ignorance, more or less, in a sense that they don't know um, like a proper way of doing things. So you have to tolerate your child like pooping on the floor and things like that. You know, it's like you tolerate that and you just you deal with the circumstance, and you have patience too. Like, that's a nice thing. It's like patience and tolerance because the child will grow into a more mature stage where you don't have to worry about these things. But then it's gonna be something else.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. It's like tolerance is one of those things we can always take shelter of because we're gonna have to tolerate ourselves, even our bodies. Like we're gonna have to tolerate our minds. Our mind says so many things, and we tolerate it until we have a clear mind. Through practicing meditation and chanting and yoga and whatnot, then our mind will become more clear. But until then, we tolerate. We have to tolerate. We have to be patient with the process. Because there's we're all going through a process, and this is hopefully to help us learn. Help us learn who we are, essentially, like who we really are, beyond the skin, beyond our conditioning. We find out what it is that I really am. And the yoga text suggests that we're spiritual beings. We're eternal spiritual beings, which have nothing to do, like we live in a world of bliss and ecstasy, but we're in a conditioned state where we're not experiencing bliss and ecstasy at every moment. It comes and goes. You know what I'm saying? It's like we feel it here and then it goes away, and then but to get back in touch with ourselves, that's when we will feel that at every moment, because that's who we are. We're Satchit Ananda, which means full of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. And so that is hopefully where a lot of this what's going on right now will help us get to, is realizing that we're not the external circumstance. That does not dictate how I feel. Who I am, but who I am is what's inside. That's and that way we can cultivate this time, this day and age. We can take advantage of that uncomfortable external circumstance to say, well, I can't enjoy it here. Because sometimes we think we can enjoy through the external circumstance, but that's the thing about, like in the yoga text, it talks about that sometimes we get happiness and distress, just like the summer's here and sometimes the winter's here. We all love the warm weather and whatnot, but most people don't like the cold, rainy weather. They want the warm sunshine weather, especially us here in Florida. Someone's trying to call me again. I must be a popular person. No one ever calls me this time of day. But anyway, and then in that same verse that comes from the Bhagavad Gita, it says that one must tolerate the happiness and distress without being disturbed. So being on the spiritual level means you observe the happiness and distress coming, and you just you don't become like a cold robot to it. But you okay, I'm experiencing happiness now, but it'll pass, and then I'll have some distress. Okay, this will pass, like that. And we can obtain that level through self-realization.
Definitely.
So that's that's how we can take advantage of this situation right now. And I think you can relate with that. I think I think you, and that's why we're here, talking about these things, because a lot of people, they relate with this, but they're wondering, like, well, how can I have that all the time? So that's where the next topic comes. But do you have anything to reflect upon there, or anything?
Definitely. Yeah, and it's interesting because both values so far, you've referenced the yogic texts and their foundations in them, and both of them are also very strong in Stoic philosophy, which is something that I, try to practice pretty regularly. But I think that one of the things that people get held up on whenever they hear maybe statements like that about, like, tolerate the happiness and tolerate the sadness, is they're like, well, shouldn't we feel it? But it's not about not feeling it. It's about not leading with that, not letting that take the control, right? And being able to remain grounded through all experiences. Because if we're
Yeah.
overly excited, and like we're riding that wave of just like, oh my gosh, that's whenever we go to the casino and lose all our money, whenever.
I'm gonna win $1 million. Oh yeah, no, just one here, there's one here. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I lost it.
yeah,
Damn,
and it's
that's what they
because
call
whenever we
what a
get
panic.
there, the 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 logic portion of our mind kind of starts ramping down, right? And that's whenever, and I think that's ultimately like both values so far. What I see the connection is, if we were to just take a longer frame of reference, like we're
Right.
so used to seeing what's right before us and reacting. If we were to, zoom out and see, existence and life as a bigger thing, all of a sudden
Mm,
we can remain a lot more grounded and centered in our actions, because it's not about, it's not about like, oh my god, I just lost, $200,000 in the stock market, or my job, or I don't know how I'm going to feed my kids. you know
yeah.
we start seeing like the bigger picture. And for me, one of the most like grounding thoughts is anytime I start really stressing out, I think back about the hardest times of my life. And,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
without exception, all the hardest times of my life are also the times of my life that I'm most grateful for. So, just kind of reflecting
Yeah.
on that, I can return to, all right, I don't have control over this. The only thing that I really have control over is how I respond to this. What are the thoughts
Mm,
that I'm going to choose to deploy right now? That's going to create my emotional state. That's going to influence the actions I take, and that's going to influence where I end up, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the line.
exactly. Exactly. Mind is very powerful, and if we have the right tools, how to guide the mind, then we'll be fine. Otherwise we can put ourselves into a great depression. If we think, oh, I let me try to control the situation, but we can't. We try and if we try and it doesn't happen, then we become depressed. You know what I'm saying? And we don't want to be there. No one wants
Yeah.
to be there. And so that's what's nice about this situation. It's going to force you into depression or into complete bliss.
Mm-hmm.
It's you can choose the road. You can choose which way you want to go. But we don't
Definitely.
have to choose that lower road. We should take the higher road to see where the lesson is about how we grow. Like you're saying, you're grateful for those times. It's because we grew and we became a better person. We became more mature. We gained more wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we were able to live our life better because we had that experience under our belt.
Yep.
So this kind of falls into the next thing is self-reflection. So that's what we're already automatically doing here. This self-reflection is it's like we see, okay, how how am I reacting to this? Like how we can look at ourselves from like a observational point of view. Like, okay, uh, how am I thinking? Where's my thinking patterns going? Like people, for example, they either respond to something with fear or with love, right? That's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is how we can measure this in a sense. When people react in fear, they panic and they go to the store, they buy all the toilet paper, because they're afraid they're not going to be able to wipe their butt for 2 months or something like
Yeah.
that. And then it puts other people in the difficulty because people who are just like not freaking out, then they go there and like, damn, I can't get any toilet paper. Some guy just came here and took all the toilet paper. You know what I'm saying? And then we see like people become fearful, and then you just watch the news all day,
Mm.
and then they just live in this fearful bubble, right? And then they can just be so panicked and so um, paranoid about getting coronavirus. They probably will get coronavirus because they're attracting it, and they might not be taking care of their health. They're just eating Twinkies while watching the news all day. It's like you know, you can be proactive. Like do some research on how, like they say, these are some of the things you can do. How do you boost your immune system? Maybe you make some green smoothies or do some exercise. Some pranayama. You know,
Mm-hmm.
meditate or try to plan some positive things into your day. And this will probably keep you healthier and free from coronavirus. They're just fear mongering, and you're just you're attracting it to yourself.
Yep.
So like I've just been following all the positive things in my life. I've been making plans. Like, okay, of course, you gotta take precautions. That'd be stupid if you didn't. Like, don't go here, don't go there. Wash your hands. Whatnot. You follow that. You get enough food if you need. You need some food. Like maybe it'll be scarce in the next few weeks, month, or whatever, and you just store up, do the needful. But I'm not gonna let it rule my life in a sense. I'm just gonna make some adjustments, and I'm just gonna try to take the higher road. Okay, I can read more now. Because I'm not like running around town doing this and that all day. I can read more. I can study more. I can connect with my loved ones more. Many people are doing these things. I can do some podcasts. I can do some, writing. There's like a lot of positive things you can do. More yoga, more pranayama, chanting. All these things that cultivate mode of goodness. Bhagavad Gita talks about these three modes. There's the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. You might have read that before. Mode of goodness, it might be like poison at first, but it's nectar in the end. Mode of passion, it's nectar in the beginning and poison in the end. And that's like you're talking about the gambling thing. It's like, well, and before I go back to, okay, I'll go to ignorance. Ignorance is horrible in the beginning, horrible in the end. It's all the way through and through, not enjoyable. But mode of goodness, we're trying to get to this mode because, okay, it may be poison in the beginning, and I'm talking about like austerities or, anything worthwhile is going to take usually some struggle, some difficulty. But then when you get to the goal, then it's worth it. Then it's like, okay, I worked for this, and now this is a sustainable situation. It's just like kind of like I was saying earlier about someone who wants to become a doctor. There's some goal they're going for. It takes some austerity. It takes some difficulty for some years, per se. But then you get to the goal, and then you're a doctor, and you can make like more money, and you have something that you love to do, hopefully. So it's like that. Mode of goodness is more like that. There's even foods in the mode of goodness. There's foods in the mode of passion. Foods in the mode of ignorance. The foods in the mode of goodness, they give life. They're full of life and they give life. Fruits, vegetables, grains. These are foods. These are foods that prolong life. And then there's foods in the mode of passion, which are like overly salty, spicy. Or they're maybe some. I'm not sure. I think meat goes in there too, but definitely meat goes in ignorance because most meats do over time cause disease and whatnot like that. So ignorance would be like I think they're in the passion. I can check later, but I think ignorance and passion, they sometimes are similar. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's a lot of mixing there. So in ignorance, though, it's like food that's like rotten or like putrid or whatnot. Like foods that in the beginning they cause disturbance and in the end they cause disturbance. Like rotten food. Like food with no nutrients in it. Even you eat something, it just creates cancer. And passion can be like that too, because in the beginning it's like, oh, these potato chips are awesome, and then you're like, oh, that corn oil,
Yeah.
now I have like colon cancer or whatever. I have clogged arteries. It's like
a premorbidity.
So goodness is, huh?
I said now I have a premorbidity, which is essentially the thing that is making us vulnerable. That's the 99% of critical cases for the coronavirus have premorbidities. So something like hypertension or cancer or something that's already.
So they were cultivating a mode of ignorance or passion in their life, and then they attracted something that was attracted to those things. It's like it's like anything, if you have a clean house, you won't have cockroaches. You're probably not, and if you do, it's not because you don't have a clean house. It's like circumstance. There's a lot of cockroaches in the area, but if you have a clean house, there won't be any bugs or cockroaches because they got nothing to eat, and your house is kept in a way that doesn't attract those living entities. Which cause a problem. But if you do have a dirty house, you probably have ants, you probably have bugs, you probably have rats. These are things that cause disturbance.
Mm-hmm.
But you were thinking, oh, it's okay. I'm just gonna eat now and I'll pick it up later. And then what happens because you neglected that? Then you have an issue, bigger issue. So it's like that with illnesses too. You didn't take care of your health. You didn't take precautionary methods. But even beyond being precautious, just like things that help you. Like eating in a way that like helps you. Like my dad, I was talking to my dad. He's 63, I think, and I was kind of asking him like, "Are you, you're technically in high risk?" And he's like, "Not because of my health, maybe because of my age." He said, "I'm in good health. He eats green. He drinks green smoothie every day. He doesn't, I think he doesn't eat meat hardly at all anymore. He exercises regularly, goes to gym. He's like, yeah, I'm in good health. He has the health of a 45-year-old maybe. He's doing, very good. Whereas he's worried about his brothers because his brothers smoke and they are out of shape and they don't take care of cleanliness as much as he does. So he's worried about them because they're living in a different mode.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad is like, he's more into like cultivating that goodness, and he's healthy. He doesn't have to get sick. And he's not worried. I talked to him yesterday. He's like, oh yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, it's like because he lives a life where he knows he doesn't have to worry about like at least a fatal case.
Mm-hmm.
According to statistics at least. That he's in a better situation, even though he may be the same age as the guy next door who lives his life in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
The 63-year-old guy next door, he chose different habits in life. He neglected certain things that would cause his health. He has immunity problems, or he has diabetes, and this would be there's a higher percentage that they could suffer from this. So the same thing goes for our consciousness. How we prepare our consciousness for these situations. People react differently to certain things. Like one guy could be, oh, I got in a car accident. It's like, oh, devastated. This is so horrible. The whole life's ruined. Other guy's like, okay, it was an accident. It wasn't my fault. What's to be done next?
Mm-hmm.
It was something out of my control. He just handles it in a more logical, rational way. What can be done? He doesn't lament. This is just a simple example. They're prepared. They're mentally conscious and prepared. In the yoga text, it talks about the art of dying. You ever heard that George Harrison song, "The Art of Dying"?
Mm-mm.
Before? Oh, I encourage you to look it up. It's talking about how living, like cultivating through life, you cultivate the art to die. Because the whole idea in the yogic text is that whatever consciousness you're in at the time of death is what you'll attain in your next life. How you lived your life determines like what your next life is going to be. And this is like karma and reincarnation, which is ABCs of Bhagavad Gita. First few chapters talk about this, chapter 2 and 3. But whatever state of mind you have when you pass, that's what you'll attain your next life. So he explains, he sings about the song that the most important thing in life is to cultivate, like to learn about this art of dying, because it matters. It's people react to death differently. Like some people, when they're about to, if they see death coming, like brush of death, they'll curse, or they'll be in fear. But someone who's conscious and who's prepared, they'll chant a mantra.
Yeah.
They'll say a prayer. They'll take shelter of something higher. They'll be ready because they know they live their life like death could happen at any moment. So they should live their life in a way that the next moment they may not exist in this plane anymore. And so they're prepared. They're prepared. They're not afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where like the difference between fear and love is, because if you're in love with the divine, if you're cultivated that, then you don't have anything to worry about. You don't have it's things that are out of your control. You do your best you can. You do your due diligence and preparation for whatever circumstances may come. But ultimately that things are largely out of your hands.
Yeah.
And you're okay with that. You're like totally blissed out about that. You're like, yeah.
Yeah.
Who would want all that responsibility to be in control of everything? So you're totally fine with it. You're totally like, death comes. Okay, what's next? Looking forward to the next chapter of eternal life. So
There you go.
So yeah, and this all ties with the self-reflection. This all ties in with the patience and tolerance and self-reflection. It's a whole circle. Um, Being able to view your thought patterns, how you react to things. And this self-reflection will help you get in contact with the soul. Help you get in contact with your consciousness, who you are, and then you'll be experiencing that eternality, knowledge, and bliss at every moment. So I'm kind of going on here. I want to hear from you. What's your reflection on this?
Well, first off, self-reflection is the thing that I hope more people can obtain, or experience through this. You know, starting whenever with the social distancing, I began noticing my friends on social media and whatnot, the ones who obviously don't have a very hard time sitting with self. You know, being more resistant, getting kind of flighty, and I think those are probably it's the most important for those people to really have some stillness. Because if you're constantly filling, I think of it as like filling this hole, like we just have this sense of emptiness somewhere, that may be tied to anything, but we're filling it with social engagements and, food and media and whatever, but we're chasing that constant dopamine hit, in order to stay on top of the wave. And the more we ride that, the more fearful we are of, wiping out. And I think it's really important to get in that wave, and that wave is not something that is achieved by anything outside of ourselves. It's like true fulfillment is found in the moments whenever you have nobody by your side, and it's not tied to any of the successes you've made, but where you reflect on yourself and your character and who you are, and you're proud and you're grateful, and you're ready for death as well. Like, it's not that you're seeking it, but you know that you've obtained something that can't be found outside of yourself. So I hope that many people get more accustomed with that. And to be frank, throughout this whole experience, my life hasn't changed so much, because this year has largely been spent right where you see me right now. And that's not something that I feel upset about at all. Hold on. Not that I feel upset about, but instead, like, that I've desired, and, this year has been full of the inner work, which is the reason why whenever this all began, my response wasn't, oh my gosh, what's happening? But it was actually a heightened sense of calm, Not to say I'm, immune against fear and anxiety. But whenever shit hits the fan for me, whenever chaos is about, it provides clarity. It provides clarity because you become a little more reductive and saying, okay, well, this isn't really important to me. What are the things that are important to me, and let me focus, my attention there. So yeah, I really hope that's something that more people can experience, or at least begin that path, through these times.
Yeah, I think it's something that will happen naturally. I think it's if we look at the history of the world, times of crisis did invoke that in people quite often. It does happen. Like, when everything's good, people, are carefree and careless.
Yeah.
But then when the troubles sometimes come, then they start to be like, oh, okay, It's like my guru. He talks about how the most searched word the day before 9/11 was sex. On the internet. Pornography, sex, like that. But the day of 9/11, it was like, not even on the top 100 list. People were looking up. They wanted answers. People wanted to see what, like people forget all about the gratification of something serious hits. So they're looking for answers. They're looking for, they want peace. And so, our world has fluctuated like that since time immemorial. That, sometimes it's good and people forget, and then other times it's bad. Then people get back in tune. They're forced to, in a sense. They're like, oh, it's not all good and gravy. I can't just do whatever I want. And, in a sense, I mean, like without expecting, duality to happen. It's like there's some things to be serious about in life. There's some things to search out, and it's not, your multi-million-dollar business isn't going to save you when the stock market is crashing. I have a friend. He has a multi-million-dollar business. He's a conscious person, of course, though, so he's not freaking out too much. But he's doing what he can to save it. But he's having to lay off all of his employees. He's firing 1,400 employees in the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
He's trying to save his business, But think of what mentality you'd be in if you didn't have that foundation of cultivation of self-realization. You'd probably be like ruined, and at the end of the day, when his business had collapsed, he had nothing, and he would be maybe taking drugs or alcohol just to numb the pain. It's becoming depressed. So it's like yeah, like your material situation, even though how comfy it is, when the shit hits the fan, so to speak, you know, your consciousness is the only thing you got.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're on the deathbed, no matter how many millions of dollars you have, there's no vaccine or no antidote, then it doesn't matter. What do you got then? Did you cultivate consciousness? Are you gonna, like, what's your mentality gonna be?
Definitely.
So, yeah.
Well, I would like to end this with maybe an actionable item for people, because you mentioned habits, and habits are the action within our control, and I think those sprout from our values. Our values are the consciousness within our control.
Yes.
So, what would you say maybe is a good habit? Whether this is one that you've cultivated in your own life, or you'd recommend to somebody who wants to try any one of these values on for size. What's one that meets that?
Yeah, I mean, I can just say what I do every day is I get up early, and I take a shower, brush my teeth, all that good stuff like anyone else. And I do mantra meditation. I chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And, honestly, I've found just by doing that, even if you're illiterate, can't read any books or philosophy, you can't understand anything, just by doing that, consistently, I've found to be the foundation of my life, my day. It just starts off that way and it ends that way, in a sense. It's like I have that sandwich, that bliss sandwich that I chant at the beginning of the day, end of the day, and everything in between. No matter what you do, it's protected by that. It's ensured by your practice. No matter what, I have friends who are lawyers, doctors, people that work on Wall Street. They do this every day, and they're in good consciousness. They're and they continue doing it for decades and decades and decades because it works. And it's an experiment to try it first, but I tried the experiment about 9 years ago, and I found that it works, and I just got more and more serious at doing it because it's definitely been my saving grace in so many aspects of my life, practically every aspect of my life. And so that's one practical thing people can do. Studying the yogic texts like Bhagavad Gita, that's another great thing. Cultivate knowledge, so you have those tools. You have like the philosophies to work with. Um, yeah, those two things. Very simple. Just
Yep.
eating well too. Eating vegetarian and eating consciously. That really affects you. If you what you eat is what you are. So
Mhm.
if you want to put good things into your body, then you'll have a good mentality in life. So yeah, those are a few things. Hope
Awesome.
that's all right.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll link, if you want to provide me some type of link to that chant, and we can link it in the description
Yeah,
so people can check it out.
sure. Yeah, I'll find something that's cool. You can do it with music or on meditation beats. But I'll show you one. My friend shows you how to do it on meditation beats. So it's like, you can just get some mala.
Mhm.
You know where to get malas, I'm sure. But maybe right now it's a little hard on the internet. But you can make one too. Make your own mala, 108 beads,
Mhm.
and you can make it out pretty much any bead you want. Um, it's and then or you can use your fingers even if you want. You can just count. The whole idea is that you do like a regulation. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, I did a whole round, a whole chant, the mala. I did two every day for like a month. So it's
Yep.
like that. Try it for a week. Try it for a day. Try it for 10 minutes. Whatever it is, you just try it and see what happens. See where it takes you. And you know, start small, and then if it works, then you can add. So I'll give you a link though. Yeah, I'll find something cool that you can share with the people out there in the world.
Awesome.
But I really appreciate you. I'm really happy we got to connect, and I hope we get to connect some more. I appreciate you for inviting me.
Definitely. I appreciate you. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day. Hope your efforts at the, is it considered a temple?
Yeah, it's like a center. It's called
Yeah.
Krishna House.
Well, I hope
Yeah,
your
it's a little
efforts
center.
at the Krishna House pay off, and you guys can find a way to keep the keep everything moving.
Yeah. We're hoping that some people can come together to keep this place going.
Definitely.
And if not, that means there's another plan. So we gotta
Yep.
accept that too.
Understood.
Sometimes things are destroyed to build a new thing. So but we'll try
Indeed.
our best to maintain.
All right. Excellent. Well, this was a wonderful time. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you, everybody, for checking in.